Tonight, we get explosive because, ladies and gentlemen, we get to speak with, I would dare say, one of the greatest backyard wrestling companies in history. It's the longest running one in the state of Indiana. 20 years going strong in their 21st season. And they are getting ready for a huge show coming up here this Thursday called Nothing to Lose. They've also got maybe their biggest show yet in history, Summer Mania 18. It's going to certainly end the summer. It's going to kick the fall off in strong fashion. And our guest here tonight has been behind all of that. He is a Hall of Famer, a 9-time XCW champion. He has done it all. He has even been in my shoes. He's refereed. He's been in the Indies. There is really nothing that this man hasn't done. He's going to talk about all of it and some. He needs no further introduction, but because it's the first time he's here on Sportswire Radio, he is going to get that introduction that we have all come to know and love here on Sportswire Radio, with the exception of my voice. So with that, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, the man behind the longest running backyard wrestling company in the state of Indiana, the man they call Fletch. My friend, how are you?
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that very much. I definitely am looking forward to this one. You've got quite a story, and certainly I'm excited to dive into it. And, for those that are listening and watching here in Sportswire, we speak with all these different companies, but I wanted to kind of ask you something kind of right off the top. And I'm going to get into Nothing to Lose. I'm going to get into Summer Mania 18, a lot to talk about. I'm going to try in the amount of time that we have allotted with you. But what has it meant to you to be the longest running backyard wrestling company in the state of Indiana, XCW Shelbyville, 20 years in season 21?
It's it's crazy. Like, of course, when you start out on ventures like this, you never think about um how long it's going to go. Of course, when we started out, I mean, I was in middle school, high school, um, and we were just all a bunch of wrestling lovers, and we got all of our buddies together, and we wanted to try to produce these shows, and then it kind of grew from there. We started um, getting like the replica titles. We started getting cameras. We started accumulating weapons and all these different things, and it just kind of grew. And I'll be honest with you, in the last probably decade, it's really grown way more than I thought it was going to. Kind of too big for my britches, and I've kind of I just kind of divvied out some of the responsibility, because I mean, for years it was just me, and it's definitely taken on a life of its own. And it's crazy to think about. I can sit back and watch all this footage from 19, 20 years ago, and I'm just blown away. I literally have my entire childhood and half my adulthood right there on camera. I have all of it at my fingertips. So in a way, it's definitely special too that, there's some of those guys that were a part of XCW over the years that I don't have contact with, or that has passed away. And now I have a backlog of footage that's endless that I get to revisit all the time. So, and then I get to share it with the internet audience too. So it's really special.
Oh, no, about that. And I was curious because obviously we have on a lot of these different, I guess, yarders, undergrounders, YouTubers, whatever, I guess, descriptions you might want to have at this point. Do you have any advice for them?
The biggest thing is you got to really find your own footing. Some people would say that are in XCW that have worked with me before is that I run a very tight ship. Um, I've even been called the Vince McMahon of backyard wrestling, and it's just, a lot
Well,
of
you've
that
been
is
around 20 years. I mean, to be
yeah.
fair, think about
Uh,
it, right? We have a lot of these, yarders, whatever you want to call them, and we love them, but their experience compared to you, they're literally a new kid on the block. I mean, so the fact that 20 years you've been doing this and you've thrived. I mean, very few people in anything. Look, I'm doing this 5, right? So in podcasting terms, that's a big deal, right? 5 years and to continue to grow, but you've done it for 20. That's
yeah,
a big deal.
yeah. I mean, we started out on the ground, and then it switched to mattresses, and then it switched to, like at one point we wrestled on a porch, like a patio, a porch, but it had like wood in the middle of it, and you could like climb it like a rope, and like we made it look as legit as we possibly could. So like we've had so many different things, and then of course in 2016 is when we got our first ring, and we never looked back. We just continue to grow from there. So it's been it's been a crazy ride for 20 years. Um, a lot of times I get questioned about how long are you going to do this? Well, I'll be honest, my body is beat to hell and back. Um,
Well, I've seen
I
some most recent XCW Shelbyville shows. You certainly had some troubles as well in the ring, but I mean, what you've done certainly, though, I think maybe your greatest assets would be what you've done outside the ring in for 20 years. And I got some questions here from people already. So let me get to one here, actually from somebody called the Nemesis James Taylor. So in fact, I'm going to go straight to the top here and go to James Taylor. Question for Fletch, veteran to veteran. How do you feel about guys like myself with the same vision and experience coming to XCW and making an appearance?
Yeah, I feel like the door is always open to work with people. That's one of the unique things that I feel like XCW has over a lot of other companies out there is that we do have those secondary shows like Rundown. Um,
The
we
extra shows we've
have
seen, Rundown,
extras,
the one match, the interview. We
right?
see obviously Nothing to Lose is coming up this Thursday. You have a number of shows that are almost, I think we were talking about this off the air, that almost like to me, they're like back in the day, you had WCW Worldwide. WCW Saturday Night before it became a secondary, it was a main show, but then it became a secondary show during when Nitro and Thunder came up. But you have those shows that almost give the talent the opportunities to kind of maybe show what they can do, but also learn their craft, get more publicity, get more experience behind the camera, which I think certainly sets, XCW apart from a number of different shows.
Yeah, so like coming up this December, we're gonna have another show that we're gonna be making, and it's XCW Encounters, which if you've been watching any of our product, you've been seeing all these vignettes, all these promos,
Yep.
kind of um, building that all up. And Encounters is going to be an opportunity for us to bring in other talent. It's going to give us the opportunity to kind of branch out a little bit. Typically, um, I'm sure other backyard companies do it. They do it kind of by season. So usually you wrap up in the winter and take a
November, it's usually November, depending where you are, and then you don't come back till like April, maybe even May
right.
in some cases.
Right. So typically we wrap up in November with the tapings. We do we do an awards banquet in December, which we usually go all out for. And then we do a show in January, we do a show in February, but for the most part, the show is kind of on hiatus until March for the most part. With the encounters thing that I have envisioned, it's almost like a secondary, almost like a Sunday Night Heat or some like a
Sure.
Velocity like WWE did back in the day.
I remember those. Yeah, Velocity was on. It was, I think, on Spike TV. It was first USA, then Spike TV. Sunday Night Heat was kind of like you had the 1 hour. Maybe you had one good storyline, maybe two secondary matches, and maybe you kind of a lead into a pay per view. Sure, I remember
Right.
very well.
So what we're going to do with Encounters is it's going to give us the opportunity to not only showcase our talent, but to also bring in talents from other places that are going to pretty much be off during the December
Right.
taping. It gives them the opportunity to come in, work with us, participate in that. We plan on filming at minimum at least 8 episodes worth. So we're going to have about 16 weeks worth of content. We're going to be featuring talent every other week on the Encounter show, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's basically we're going to have a cold match, so that's the opportunity where we're going to have guys like the Foundation. Oh,
Well, I heard that name before. You
yeah.
just went like straight to the jugular. Wow. I mean,
So
wow, I was gonna like tease it a bit. I was gonna kind of like basically just let you maybe ask about or maybe talk about different people, but you just went right off the bat and said Omen Black and Soldier are coming to XCW. Wow. I mean, you certainly know your audience.
yeah, so we're going to have that opportunity. Another name that you probably heard, Aaron Blaze.
Yes, Aaron Blaze's name. In fact, he came up. I think it was in Jason Storm or Chase Wakefield. One of them mentioned him very well. I think it was actually Chase Wakefield. Yep.
So guys that are obviously hours and hours and hours away from our
Sure.
location. We're gonna have come out for that special day. We already got the building booked. We're ready to go. So we're gonna have the building all day. We're gonna bust out as much content as we possibly can to get it out to the audience prior to our 2024 season. So
Wow.
this is a great way to not only build working relationships with the other companies that are out there, but also be able to provide content for our channel pretty much year round.
Which is a big deal because obviously a lot of yarders, listen, season's over November, it's cold, and that's it. WC, for example, last year, season was over in October, and it was like, yeah, maybe we're coming back, and I'm certainly sure. I know IMF is going to try to do the best they can, but in the meantime, I want people to follow XCW on YouTube, XCW Shelbyville. They have got so much content there. I mean, Vince McMahon actually wishes he had the amount of content he's producing these days, unlike XCW Shelbyville. So please make sure that you go out and support this great company. I have a number of comments here. I want to actually bring up somebody that is a very dear friend of mine, also a former wrestler turned person who's doing documentary work. He is really one of my biggest champions, one of my biggest supporters, Mr. Luke Leland. He also says 20 years is a long time. That's what happens when you do something you're passionate about. Keep on going, Fletch. Please, everybody, if you're on YouTube, go make sure you subscribe to Luke Leland. He is working on a project that I promise you, it's going to be a really, really big deal. I also want to say hello to your son, obviously, Jacoby. Also, make sure XCW All Access channel. Also,
Yeah,
he's his son. Say
yeah,
hello. What,
yeah. He's
that
got
for a
his own
second?
little
Let's talk
thing.
about that.
Yeah, on XCW All Access, we have almost like a secondary company almost.
Yep.
JWF,
I was
Jacoby
about to
Wrestling
say
Federation.
JWF. I think when Jackson came on, we spoke about JWF for a little bit. Yep, absolutely, sure.
Yeah, so it kind of started as Chris Jones, XCW Hall of Famer.
No false finish host.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, he wanted to get Jacoby. He knows how much Jacoby loves wrestling and loves XCW. So he wanted to get him involved. So he purchased wrestling gear for him for Christmas and promised him a match.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that's a pretty cool thing there.
So Chris and Jacoby had their match, and it just kind of spiraled from there. The more he got in the ring, the more comfortable he got, the more content we ended up bringing out. And I'll be honest, some of those JWF shows and content that we bring out almost or do outperform what we're doing on our main channel. So people are tuning in from everywhere to watch JWF, and for being 9 years old, the kid brings it. So
Well, how does that make you feel knowing that your son's actually going to go into your footsteps, right? It almost reminds me of, I think, what was it? Stephanie McMahon had said something once in an interview that she had actually been in person for every single WrestleMania. She's got to be, I don't know, maybe in her 40s by now. And you think about it, yeah, well, I guess she was literally born right out of the womb and went to the first WrestleMania. And your son's almost like the same thing. He's going to be, when you're long gone, he's going to be running XCW Shelbyville.
Yeah, I mean, I remember doing I can't remember 11th or 12th anniversary show where he's a baby, he can't even keep his head up, and we kind of I mean, I know that this is going to sound bad because if anyone who knows me knows that I rag on all these companies that cosplay other feds. And when I
Yeah,
say other
I know
feds,
where this
I
is
mean
going. I know where this is
what's
going.
on TV.
Yes, yes, yes. I know where this is
I
going.
think being creative and being original is so important. Um, you know, for a number of reasons, which I'm not even going to get into. But
Sure,
I
sure.
did, of course, every wrestling company, every wrestling fan, every wrestling promoter has to get inspiration from different things, of course.
Absolutely.
And so there was one anniversary show where, if you look back at WrestleMania 20, Shane's holding his
My
baby.
brothers were there. About an hour away from where I live is where Madison Square Garden is. So my
Yeah,
brothers were there. Remember it very well.
yeah. So the show started. The tagline was "Where it all begins again." It shows Vince, it shows Shane, and then like the next generation. And so we kind of took inspiration for that and had Jacoby featured. Just a few months old on one of our anniversary shows. So, um, it's crazy now. Full circle, here he is, and he's beat me up on a weekly basis. So
Well, you've been having your issues on TV. I'll certainly get to that later on here, but I have a bunch of comments I'm behind, and I do want to say hello to people. CJ Black says, "Welcome to Omen Black Show," but Mr. Black actually follows it up, so I'll come back to that. What's up, Fletch? Obviously, IMF. You just pretty much mentioned the foundation, and they're a company that not too far from you guys have a huge following. And then Omen Black would like to say thanks for the introduction, but Fletch, welcome to my show. Also, I have here for I don't even know if I really want to bring this up from Omen, but I'm going to do it in teasing, by the way. Question for Fletch. What about having the GOAT like gunshot in XCW? I couldn't keep a serious face typing that. So I'm gonna let you say 30 seconds on it because I'm really trying to turn a new leaf on Sportswire.
so I know that, um, I've heard of Gunshot. I'll be
Yes.
honest. When I'm putting out as much content as I am, I will be completely honest. I'm getting most of my information about other companies secondhand from Dale, from Jackson Law,
Yes.
from Captain Law, whatever you guys want to call him.
I just
Um,
call it Mr. Law. How about
yeah,
that? That way I
yeah.
keep everybody happy.
So I call him Jackson just because that's
Sure. Well,
yeah.
you're the promoter. I would certainly not disagree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I get a lot of my secondhand information from him of what's going on in the backyard wrestling world, and obviously he's a well
CBW, which
traveled.
you're the general manager for as well.
Yes, yeah, he's a well traveled wrestler, so I definitely get some information from him, and I can't say I've heard very many positive things about Gunshot. Now, I'm not saying that he's burying him, but
No, no. I
um,
think that there are certain wrestlers that they feel they have opinions, strong opinions of Mr. Gunshot, and
yeah. So
the
I'll
part of
be
law
honest,
may decide
I
that.
don't know anything about him, so
Okay, fair. You know what? I'm so happy you answered it that way because I really didn't want to spend a half an hour on this poor guy. I really didn't.
yeah. And
Uh,
like I was in the comments last
yes,
week, I believe, and
I saw. Yes, I
I told
saw.
people I'm not going to come on here, and I'm not gonna I'm not going to come on here and play a gimmick. I think this is an opportunity for the people who don't know who XCW is and don't know who I am
Which is
to
why I
genuinely
wanted to
find out
bring
who I am.
yes, and thank you for doing that because this is why I really wanted to bring you on because I am excited about this company. I've gotten to know it, and we touched upon it a little bit with Mr. Law, but I don't want to make this into a urinating contest. I really don't. I do
Yeah,
want to say hello to a company that's out there in Australia. He's also a host of a podcast. Maybe you'll be a future guest on that. It's the Wired Up Podcast. A very young and hungry guy, Ace Reed. They're on Instagram at _backyard_elite_ wrestling. Hello. He is, I think it's 8:22 a.m. in Australia right now.
oh
So
wow.
yeah, it's 14-hour difference. So and we get the XCW chants from your son. Very well done. Um, I heard of the foundation. Those guys aren't cheap and they're really good. That's an Omen part. Also, Mr. Taylor talks about he would ever, if you want to come on his show, he would certainly be happy to have you on. He's the Nemesis Sessions. He's got 41,000 subscribers on YouTube. Taft Taylor, Taft_Taylor on Instagram. Okay, so let's obviously talk about Summer Mania. Summer Mania is really I guess it's one of the flagship shows of the year. I would dare say in the backyard scene, this is going to be really one of the premier shows of the summer.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. You've got a new champion. You got a couple of different titles we're going to crown here. We got some really, really big stars here on the roster. Gotten to know some of them, in addition to Mr. Law. So let's talk about what we can expect coming up here at Summer Mania 18.
So Summer Mania, of course, it is our biggest show of the year. So we tried to do everything to make that show feel like it's the biggest deal that we possibly can. Whether that's pyro on the show, doing extra video packages, really, it's all culmination of everything that we work on through this season. So, everything pretty much after Summer Mania is almost like a reset button. And so Summer Mania, we just present it as big as we possibly can, the biggest matches with the biggest outcomes. And this year's going to be no exception when it comes to surprises and seeing what, you didn't expect to see. So it does get hard to attempt to top Summer Mania every year. I'd never thought that I was going to be able to top Summer Mania in 2020, and here I am. I'm trying everything that I can to push the envelope and make this the biggest presentation possible. So.
Well, I have a good feeling that you will, and the reason I have a good feeling that you will is you got a great roster of talent. It starts off at the top with your world champion, Corey Lee, 7-time world champion, recently took the title a few months ago from Tommy Merriman, who was obviously feuding with Mr. Law, who came on here. And let's talk about our world champion here. Obviously, he's the standard bearer at XCW Shelbyville. And what can we expect from him at Summer Mania 18?
Corey Lee is one of those guys that when you talk about XCW, he's at the top of everybody's list.
Absolutely.
Whether they want to work with him, they want to see him. Corey Lee has been here since 2009, so he's not new to the game at all. He's been around the block a few times. He's found ways to reinvent himself over and over again. And he continues to be a major player in XCW. And I'm sure that, once Summer Mania comes and goes, that he's still one way or another, win, lose, or draw, is going to be the talk of the town. And, I don't see Corey Lee slowing down right now. I know that there's been rumblings, there's been talks about him possibly slowing down and maybe giving the floor to the new guys, giving them their flowers. But I don't know. Corey Lee, he's a headstrong guy. He's never missed a single show in his career, and that's why he comes out with the XW Championship, because he strives.
He's a 7-time champion, nonetheless.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that, right? To be 7 times on anything.
Yeah.
And he finds a way. I mean, here's a guy that's been here a long time, and he's always found himself in or right around the main event. So you got to give him, regardless of what we think about him on XCW Shelbyville TV, you got to give him a lot of credit, sir, in what he's been able to do to hang around.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there a decade and a half, and if you watch his work, it doesn't slow at all. So yeah, he's a major player in XCW, and I'm honored to have him a part of the XCW roster. So and he brings it no matter where he goes, though. I mean, when we did some work with UWA last year, and we've done work with CBW and obviously XCW, and he brings it every time. So.
Oh, no question about that here. And we have a website, by the way, for XCW, which I'd like to promote. You can go to xcwwrestling1.wixsite.com / Shelbyville. So make sure you do that. You can go to also for Champions History. You can go to xcwwrestling1.wixsite.com / Shelbyville / Champions. So please make sure you go out and check all the great things that XCW Shelbyville has to offer. And let's talk about our international champion who took the title actually from somebody who held it not too long ago, came on the show, Mr. Law himself, and Hunter Halkin. And obviously, he's going to be a huge part of the show coming up here at SummerMania 18. And let's talk about him for a few minutes.
So you got to admit that Hunter Halkin's probably one of the fastest rising stars in XCW's long history.
No question about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, immediately upon his debut in 2022, he was immediately put into a tag team situation with Blackheart. Immediately catapult into a storyline alongside myself as a member of the royalty. And he brings it and continues to bring it. There's a lot of guys that are coming up in the ranks in XCW that, and if you go back into the annals of time of XCW, and you can really look at guys that just come right in with, swinging arms. And he's it. He's one of those guys that comes into the locker room and everybody wants to work with him. And it slowly we've been, we didn't want to give him too much at once. We want to keep him here a long time, and doing that is building a story. And that's one thing that also, in my opinion, kind of sets us apart from a lot of other companies is we really take the time to tell a story. And the story that we're telling right now is that, Hunter Halkin grew up a black sheep. He's a quiet little gamer guy, but he also has something that makes him tick. And, Jackson Law was that one that made him tick, and he finally came out with the international title. And he's got a hell of an opponent in Brogan O'Shea, who, if you don't know anything about him, he's a straight brawler, and he'll take you to Hunter Halkin.
We say this all the time about Omen and Soldier, how those would be guys that I wouldn't want to meet in a darkened alley, but Brogan's one of those guys I would definitely the same thing about.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. He lives up to his name, the Rambler. He's a brawler through and through. Not only can he speak, but he can back up what he's doing out there. And kind of breaking news right now. You want some of that?
Breaking news. I tell you something. You have really been right off the bat here tonight. You did one thing here talking about Omen and Soldier right off the bat coming to you, and now you got more breaking news. I mean,
I do.
Mr. Fletch, the floor is yours. I mean, you're the boss. I mean, you're the guy basically of backyard wrestling. You might be the father of it. So, floor is yours.
Aside from our pre-show for SummerMania coming up, Brogan O'Shea and Hunter Halkin for the International Championship in a TLC match will open SummerMania 18.
Wow. You want to repeat that again for those that are listening and watching out there?
Yes, SummerMania 18, Hunter Halkin, Brogan O'Shea, International Championship on the line in a TLC match. And I'll tell you, this is really going to set the pace for what's to come on the rest of the show.
And I'll tell you why I'm excited about that here for a second, aside from the fact that you actually said it here on Sportswire. But, I've spoke to a lot of wrestlers over the past 5 years of doing this, whether it's, I don't even know what you want to say, pro, indie, YouTube, underground, backyard, Mickey Mouse at this point, for all I know, right? But the opening match, and sometimes when you think about especially a big show like this, and in some ways, is really the biggest match of the night, that opening, because it sets the pace. So to have a match like this where a lot's on the line, international title, and then a TLC, this is a big deal. I think this is why you are really going to top any SummerMania that you've ever done before, because you're opening it up, international title, Brogan and Hunter for international title, and a TLC match. I mean, talk about how important this opening match is really for any wrestling show, and especially SummerMania 18.
Yeah, I put the pressure on myself a year ago at SummerMania 17, going one-on-one with Hunter Halkin for the Mr. SummerMania Cup. My old body, I'll be honest, I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to live up to the hype of being match number one on the card. From what I gather, people definitely enjoyed mine and Hunter's match, so I guess we did the job. But yeah, it's a tough spot for them to be in. Both of them have been in that position before as I said, Hunter with myself last year, and then Brogan O'Shea a couple years ago, was in this very spot, a ladder match against Corey Lee, in one of my favorite Summer Manias ever. So both of these guys definitely know pressure that they're under, and they both know that they have to deliver, and I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to. So.
Well, we definitely want people to go watch this on YouTube at XCW Shelbyville. You can also support XCW Shelbyville on Facebook. Please support them. I'm telling you, this is a company I'm really proud to have here on Sportswire Radio. There's an old expression from my political background is endorsements are not given, they are earned. This endorsement of XCW Shelbyville from yours truly is definitely earned. And this is a company I am so excited for Summer Mania 18 here. And, a couple of other wrestlers I have to talk about. And I have comments. I will get to them. I promise I'll get the people out there. But there's two wrestlers I have to talk about that have caught my attention for a number of different reasons. Jay Ellis and Brandon Hobbs. Talk about those two here for us.
Well, Brandon Hobbs actually has a very deep-rooted background in terms of wrestling. His dad was back in the old AWA days.
Yes.
Yeah. So his dad was well known. Worked some really, really big places and really made a name for himself.
AWA was big in the Midwest because it was Minnesota came from. Indiana's right next door almost in a sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. So his dad was big time in some of the smaller companies in the 80s, and
Sure.
Brandon come right off of that. Brandon and I worked together at a shoot job way back when, and I was reffing in the show that he was about to begin training with, and one of the founders of XCW, there was three of us. There was myself, Kurt Acid, and Dylan Bostic, which I'm sure some people here have heard of Dylan Bostic, who is a pretty big name in terms of independent wrestlers. But the three of us sat down and made XCW back in 2003. And Brandon Hobbs made his debut for New Era Wrestling here in Shelbyville, an independent company. Brandon made his debut against Dylan Bostic, and him and I hit it off right off the bat, working together and then doing shows together. And then eventually he brought himself to XCW, and he's been a mainstay here in XCW for years. Definitely made a name for himself and brought some of the most memorable spots in XCW history, whether it's breaking Tommy Merriman's leg or throwing fireballs. Brandon's definitely an asset that you want. He's got a brain for this all the way back, from when his dad was performing. As for Jay Ellis, there's actually a company that we had worked with back in 2018. We started working with XAWA and FWL. XAWA out of New Paris, Ohio, which is now a defunct company, and that was ran by Blackheart, who's on our current roster. And FWL, Future Wrestling Legends, out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. So that's where we.
That was the Fort Wayne Fury of the CBA once upon a time, if I'm not mistaken.
Honestly, I don't know much about their history other than JJ Kelty is their owner and operator. And Jay Ellis is kind of his right-hand man, and they've both been a part of XCW since we started doing some co-brands and some tri-brands and working with those guys. So Jay Ellis was always like one of those sore thumbs of the guys that were out there locally that I knew that I really wanted to secure on my roster. We finally made that happen in 2021. He joined up with XCW, and right now on my roster, I don't think that there's anyone that's more passionate and hardworking to get themselves better than Jay Ellis. Jay Ellis will stop at nothing to make sure that somehow, some way, he ends up at the top of XCW. And kudos to him. There's a few things that I've asked him to work on. But when the timing's right, I don't see anything holding Jay Ellis back from being the biggest star in this company.
He's right there. I tell you what, he's got a lot of charisma. He's got the fans behind him. He's got the look. He's got the moves in the ring. and he's definitely a guy I'm keeping my eye on. And I have to mention one guy, and I promise I'll get to comments, but there's one guy that says he's from my neck of the woods in Brooklyn, New York. His name
Yeah.
is James Cerebral. And I had to ask you about him here. And I mean, you have to talk about James Cerebral here for us because he's obviously from Brooklyn. So I have to, as somebody in myself who is from Brooklyn, has to naturally ask you, Mr. Fletch, about James Cerebral.
Yeah, James Cerebral, funny. James Cerebral came to me in about 2005, 2006, and was super interested in participating in XCW. And I'll admit, I dismissed him. I wanted no part of that. And I mean, look at him. He's an intimidating guy. I mean,
I definitely could see. I was wondering, do I know? I was like, do I know him from somewhere? I'm trying to think, like, in all the neighborhoods that I actually have friends in, I'm like, have I run into this guy somewhere? Have I run into him at some like underground poker place? Have I run into him on the street? Have I run into him at a dirt rally, motorcycle rally? I mean, I'm trying to think, like, where have I run into this guy before?
yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to run into him on the street.
That's for
But
sure. That's for sure. Good point. Touche.
but yeah, so he kind of kept on it, and in 2011 we brought him in, and in 2005 we had this character D-Mac who had a very similar character, came out to similar music, actually the same song, and we were really looking to find a way to find that magic that D-Mac had and a new character. And I kind of laid it on the table to Cerebral. Hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. um you know Build your character based off of him being your teacher. And James Cerebral is still to this day teaching us how to stay G'd up. So
He's definitely doing that. There's no question he's doing that here. Let me get to some comments here. Omen would like to say, Fletch, IMF can't wait to do some business with you at XCW. Our friends in the state of Michigan, ROEW Backyard Wrestling. Obviously, Mr. Law has done some work for them. And
yeah,
so obviously, I'm sure you know about ROEW, CJ Black, and Jason
Josh.
Storm.
I would say I know Josh Collins. I know James Storm. So yeah,
Yeah, you knew. I figured that.
yeah.
James Taylor would like to know though, what's your personal opinion of him? He's curious. So I'm because James Taylor is obviously the Nemesis Sessions, and we always have James on here. And I mean, do you have an opinion on James Taylor? Because he is the
Um,
Nemesis.
I would say him and I, and Law and a couple other guys, had an Instagram live, and we definitely had, some really unique, really deep conversations about wrestling business, about
Sure.
backyard wrestling, independent wrestling, and the perception of of everything, everybody's companies and everybody's work. Um, and so I definitely have respect for the fact that he's been doing it as long as he has. I know that he's been around the block for quite a few years himself. um I I'll be honest, I of course, like I said earlier, there's times I don't even have time to watch my own product
I
because
figured that. I
so
figured that there's certain people you have an eye on, other companies. Obviously they certainly have, done things differently than the way you've done it. So I could certainly understand that answer that you gave there. But
yeah.
I was curious on something because I noticed that Greed, you guys had did the show in like a gym, and obviously the company has evolved. And at one time, you guys were called Extreme Championship Wrestling. Obviously, now we're Explosive Championship Wrestling. And I was curious on the name change. And do you feel that also in a way the company has evolved in that sense? Because you guys have a lot of talent that, are like pro wrestlers. You have a lot of talent that it's not to me like people that, how can I say this without being very knocking anybody or being whatever you might want to call it, is people they just take anybody to fill their roster so they can put a show on. And clearly, they don't even know how to put a punch together. They don't know how to fall. There's certain things there, but yet you guys have a roster. It's like a really skilled roster. And the name change also going along with that from, extreme to explosive. Kind of talk about that and why that was, and maybe that's going along with how skilled the roster is right now.
Yeah, so there's actually a really deep rooted story to this. From 2003 in our inception all the way up to 2008. In 2008, we did a show that was called the Farewell Show, and a lot of people thought that it was the end of XCW, when in actuality it was kind of a way of for us to say goodbye to the the guys that are not getting properly trained, the guys that are just there to fill bodies.
Right,
Um,
right.
we wanted to. So in 2008, we strived to like, hey, let's, a lot of us were working independence or being trained on the independence, and so we wanted to take the skill that we were learning from that and really bring it to XCW and make XCW stronger. And so a lot of those people, they were either going on to other ventures, like at that time, that was the last appearance on the official roster of Dylan Bostic, who obviously has worked for WWE, TNA.
Yeah, he's a name I've definitely seen on my TV in the
Yeah,
home. So as a
yeah,
name,
he's
I
been
know
on.
the name.
Yeah, he's been on WWE, Impact, AEW. I mean, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Northeast Wrestling, NEW there. So like Dylan's been all over the place. So it was a goodbye to him and a goodbye to the old standard of XCW. From 2008 to 2016, that's where we got guys like Psycor and Brandon Hobbs and a lot of these guys that were just super talented and went out there and just did amazing work. So that was kind of that transition. So um, you know, no offense to a lot of the guys out there that work a lot of the deathmatch styles or work more hardcore style on their shows. But I've seen our company evolve. I've seen so many people evolve, and I feel like hardcore and extreme sometimes is a mask for some people's ability. And
They what the term they used to use? They would call it garbage wrestling. Was the term they used to call it at one point? I mean, I hate to throw it out there, but there are some people that would kind of throw that term out there. It's basically like it's not true to what you might have believed in the territory days if you were going to go down that road.
right. Well, so a lot of it is when you're doing hardcore spots and stuff, or at least this is from my booking point of view, and that's not always true because I have guys that kind of are in and out of different things, and obviously you want some of your better talent to work with your underdeveloped talent to get those guys to that point. But oftentimes in the way of doing things creatively, if you have a guy that kind of lacks in that skill, you want to put them in a situation where you can put them in hardcore situations to kind of mask the fact that they're not the best in the ring.
Sure.
And I feel like, obviously there's ECW out there that was Extreme Championship Wrestling
I
too.
was right near my stomping grounds where I grew up.
Yeah.
ECW was a big thing. Sure, absolutely.
So, I mean, I didn't want us to sound like we're completely piggybacking off of us, or we were piggybacking off of them for the name. And then also in 2016, a lot of the guys decided that they wanted to take on another venture. So we did close in May of 2016 with a show called Until the End. And then we came back in 2017 with Glory Reunion. So when we started back for Glory Reunion, I didn't want to do things the same way that I did before, and one of those was having that moniker of extreme. And one of those reasons is because I feel like, and I'm sure every single person that comes on this show that has worked backyard, every guy that's in these comments have heard it a trillion times that backyard wrestling is a bad word.
I do.
And,
I do a lot of British professional wrestlers, and some guys, when I've had backyarders come on, they go, "Oh, you're speaking to a backyard guy. These guys are dead." One guy, I don't want to name his name, who's kind of a controversial figure in the UK, would go, "Oh, they're daredevils." But the truth is, a lot of guys who are in the pros, they won't want to admit it or not, they came from the backyard.
right. So when we started back up with Reunion in 2017, that was one thing I wanted to break away from was, when you hear extreme, the first thing you think of is barbed wire and tables and light
Right.
tubes. And I was presenting a show out there that seen actual wrestling talent that told stories, and I'm just like, it doesn't really fit the motif of extreme anymore. We don't really have to mask our talent anymore. We're able to go out there and have guys like Corey Lee who can go out there and tell an amazing story and is super athletic and very talented. And we don't need to mask what we're doing anymore. And I didn't want us to be a naughty word anymore. And I know that a lot of people still are, negative or derogatory towards us because people consider us YouTube wrestling or backyard wrestling. I've Brandon Hobbs and I have talked about this before. We almost created our own genre of wrestling. We call ourselves amateur pro wrestling.
Interesting. That's an interesting term. I hadn't heard that term in that way, but I do think that what I like about the product is I've gotten a chance to be familiar with it. Obviously, over the past month or so, obviously we had Mr. Law come on a few weeks ago, and obviously speaking with you even off the air. I do feel that there's a professionalism to the product. There's a flow to it. There's no, like, how can I put it? There are some companies that they're doing their best Kiss tribute or their best, tribute to, storylines in companies. There are other, companies that have their champion. He's basically doing what's at the moment. But what you guys have done is put together a real show. It's hours of TV per week. You really put together a show that's kind of like it's in its own kind of entity. So I think, to me, what you guys have subconsciously, and I don't know if it was amateur pro, but just to me, and I said this about VTW the other day, and I'll say it to you, the same thing about you guys. There's a flow to the show. I just think, to me, what speaks most about your company and why it's so successful and why it's hung around, Fletch, is that there's a flow to each match. There's a flow to everything that goes, and I think that's a successful company. Again, companies that want to do the Kiss tribute, there's companies that want to do the AC/DC greatest hits and basically what they want to do and put their 3-month storylines out. God bless them. But what I think I know that the people like and why they've stuck by XCW Shelbyville is you guys have created kind of your own vision, and it's a company that, yeah, sure, maybe it's a tight ship, maybe you do things differently, but Vince McMahon did the same thing and his company has worked. And I kind of think that what sets you guys apart is that I think that there's an originality, and the most important part, there's a flow.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that comes with obviously our experience, because if you go back and watch our product 15 years ago, you're not going to see the same flow, you're not going to have the same feeling that you do now, and a lot of that comes with experience. And unfortunately for a lot of these backyard feds especially, they fizzle out before they really get to the point where they find their niche.
Right.
And I feel like that's one thing that I've been blessed with, is having guys on my roster like James Cerebral and Corey Lee and Brandon Hobbs who have been here for years, and they've found their niche, and they're able to kind of pass that knowledge on to some of the newer guys like Hunter Houken and Brogan O'Shea and even Jack.
Our champion as well, another name
Yeah.
that's come on the scene and had a lot of success. You have a very, I think, how can I put it, diverse roster, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's all walks of life when it comes to the guys that we have on our roster, and um, and a lot of them are super creative. I mean, there's constantly guys like Evan Phoenix and Jesse Justice that are.
Evan Phoenix right now is in a really interesting storyline right now.
Yes.
I mean, that's another one. Good point.
But there's guys like them that a lot of people don't hear about behind the scenes, like um, Evan Phoenix and Jesse Justice and guys like that are always pitching all of these different ideas. Brady Branson's always pitching all these different ideas,
And these are Hall of Famers, by the way. I mean, with Jesse and Brady, these are guys that have been here in the company, and when they speak, if I'm in the locker room, I'm going to listen to those guys. They know what it takes to be successful.
Yeah. And this is Brady Branson's a guy who didn't grow up watching wrestling, didn't grow up as a wrestling fan. He was friends with Evan Phoenix in high school, and Evan's like, hey, I'm taking on this new venture. I'm doing XCW. Brought him to a show. Brady met the guys, and it's kind of love at first sight. Brady's been here since 2017, and I consider him probably in the top 3 of top stars in XCW right now. And the amount of input that he brings backstage, and helping with being creative and writing and, developing moves and training the guys, like, it's unreal. You would think that this guy has been watching and doing wrestling his entire life, and he's only been wrestling or know anything about wrestling just in the time that he's been in XCW. So that is one of our most underappreciated talents on the roster. Brady knows how to bring it for sure.
Oh, no question about that. And again, I want people to follow XCW Shelbyville also on Instagram at XCW_Shelbyville. Also YouTube, XCW Shelbyville, because we have 2 huge shows coming up. Nothing to Lose this Thursday. We already have an announced card. It's several matches on the card. Really, really excited about that. That's going to be my plans Thursday night, right after I speak with the DBW World Champion himself. Mr. Judgment is going to be here. He's going to be here at 8 o'clock. So right after I'm done with Mr. Judgment, I'm going right over to watch that full Nothing to Lose show. And then right after that, about 2 weeks or so afterwards, we've got the biggest show of the year. I would dare say maybe the biggest show of the yard, amateur pro, YouTube, underground, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be called Summer Mania 18. And I am pumped. I am fired up here. Summer might be ending, or you might even want to say summer is just starting, because XCW Shelbyville is going to have that party in my name. You might know by now, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. It is your boy, the host of the Sports Report, the man behind Sportzwire Radio, your voice of wrestling, the Reverend Tom Bryson. If you're on YouTube right now, I want to continue to thank you for subscribing to us. We're at Sportswire Radio. Sportswire Radio is 6579 backspace streams where you can watch all of our great shows. You can also follow us on Instagram at the Sports Report 2021, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And I'll also be back here midnight coming up tomorrow with Vito Fratelli, the belt collector they call him. He has wrestled and defeated the likes of TJP, Alexander Hammerstone. He has wrestled in Mexico. He is going to talk about what he is up to. I cannot wait to speak with Vito Fratelli. Forget about it. You are definitely going to be watching that with us. We are very, very excited about that. But right now, we are having a great time here with the man behind XCW Shelbyville. One of the most successful in fact, one of the most successful wrestling companies in history. 20 years, 21st season. That is a tremendous accomplishment. It is a tremendous honor to have him here on Sportswire Radio. And as I continue to say, endorsements are not given, they are earned. This one is earned here and some. And I want to say hello here before I move on to the resident rock star, Sean Jovi. He is from Wrestling Championship Entertainment. He says, I am definitely not a stranger to Indiana. Wouldn't mind checking you all out with some other WCE guys, I'm sure. Well, he's from Wisconsin, and I hear Wisconsin and Indiana is not far from you guys, and maybe we'll see Mr. Jovi and you meet sometime. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's fun. Shelbyville is just kind of in the middle of everything.
So what is Shelbyville like? Because I'm from New York City, right? I'm a dunce, right? I don't know Shelbyville, Indiana. So talk about that. What is Shelbyville, Indiana like?
Hey, funny enough, I was in your neck of the woods a few years ago. I was at WrestleMania 35, and I got to know
that was
you here pretty well. So
for sure. Yep.
yeah, so
call me next time. Call me next time you're in New York City.
yeah,
I treat you well.
Yeah, for sure. So Shelbyville is honestly, it's just like a small suburb town.
Okay.
Just 30 minutes outside of Indianapolis. So, and that was kind of what I was alluding to. We're an hour from Cincinnati. We're 30 to 40 minutes from Indianapolis. 4 hours from Detroit. 4 hours from Chicago.
Wow.
6 hours from St. Louis. So we're dead smack in the middle of everything Midwest, and I think that's one of the reasons that it's easy for us to have some of these guys come in. Tennessee, all these guys, they're 4 hours away. 4 hours away.
I would not have known that all those states you're that close away. See, I'm in New York. New York is just like so far from everything. It's like
Right.
You're on the other side of the coast, and it's like, but you guys are like really like in the smack of everything. I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, I attended SummerSlam this last weekend.
I saw that. I did see that. And Jason Storm, by the way, was at SummerSlam with his wife. I was kind of waiting, like, were you guys gonna run into each other and have a few words?
I would say Law told me, he's like, hey, Storm's there, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, 50,000 other people are here too. So, but yeah, I mean, 4.5 hours away from Detroit. So, and then when I worked with some of the guys over in Tennessee last year. Again, 4 hours away.
Yes.
Chicago's 4 hours away. So everything's just right here. I mean, we're an hour from Louisville. An hour from Louisville, yeah. So an hour from Louisville, an hour from Cincinnati, and less than an hour from Indianapolis. So you can literally get anywhere from here.
That's really cool in a lot of ways. Think about all those different states, different backgrounds, different just ways of life. That's pretty cool. And speaking of things that were really cool, which I'm kind of sad to see go because I just started getting into it. These no false finish shows with Chris Jones. I mean, you guys did 6 seasons of them, and I mean, are we going to bring him back? I mean, or is this the end? Because I actually started to enjoy these shows. I thought Chris was a natural host. I thought Chris had kind of just a good way. He would just ask the questions. I got to talk to the different talent through him and kind of like get their experiences and talk about maybe no false finish and why was that one of the more signature shows in XCW history.
So, no false finish was actually never supposed to be Chris Jones's show to begin with. Um, a guy that used to wrestle with us, Hazard, and he was kind of my right hand man for a decade or more. And him and I sat out and we're like, man, we'd really like to have kind of a no bullshit, like no gimmicky.
It reminded me of like the Drink Shots podcast where guys would just sit there and they would just kind of talk about their experiences. Chris would talk about his experiences in a lot of cases wrestling them. And I thought that was like, wow, that was cool. I want to hear more of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it gave us the platform to have guys go on and not play a gimmick and not play a character, and they could really let themselves out to the audience and really let them know what they're all about and who they are. And Chris was just the perfect host. He had such a good mind, and he really found dirt on people. He would really dig deep on people, and he wasn't afraid to, have Justin Parsley on the show and dig up his past and his infidelities and Tommy Merriman and his legal
Well, we
troubles.
heard a lot about Tommy Merriman's infidelities from Mr. Law. I mean, I don't even know if I want to go back and talk about that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, Chris didn't pull any punches, and that's kind of where we got the name No False Finish, because there's no false finish with Chris Jones. He pulled the heavy questions, and he expected an answer. And um, we had 6 great seasons, 65 episodes of No False Finish. Unfortunately, Chris kind of felt like maybe it had come and gone, and it didn't really have the interest or the spark that it had, 65 episodes prior to that.
It's tough. It's tough. And I get it because from experience, I'm doing this 5 years. And, there were things that might have worked at one time that don't work now. There are other things, other people. So, I mean, I get it because, again, I've covered different things. I have a background in news. I've covered politics. I cover college sports. So I kind of understand that. But one thing that I think has worked that I do enjoy from XCW Shelbyville's YouTube page, XCW Shelbyville, over 3,000 plus subscribers. If you have not followed, you clearly need to go subscribe now. Is these rundown shows hosted by Alex Cardona Thompson. Obviously, Mr. ACT has obviously got a Harvard-like education. He speaks like he's from Harvard. And I've kind of really enjoyed these shows because maybe you don't get a chance to watch the full 2.5 hour show, or you watch certain wrestlers and you might just want to get a recap of some of the big things. I'm really enjoying these rundown shows. So kind of talk about what Alex Cardona Thompson has done in hosting these shows. And I have to say Rundown has been kind of one of these more pleasant shows that I'll watch, let's say, when I'm ending my day in my mornings because I work overnight. I kind of enjoy catching up on those. So kind of talk about the rundown shows.
So the Rundown show actually started as a Facebook show, as a way to kind of get double the views. So they would click onto the YouTube channel or click onto our Facebook, and we'd be running down these shows. And then you'd have to click over to YouTube. Now we got double traffic. Hey, business too. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
Hey, listen, a 20-minute show, people look at it and say 20, 22, 23 minutes versus, 3 hours. Not everybody's going to sit through it one shot. So I understand it completely.
So it actually started out with Kurt Acid as the host. We did a pilot episode, and we filmed another episode, and honestly, he wasn't super comfortable. I mean, you put him in a scenario where he can cut a promo or be his character, and he's golden. But to put him in front of that camera and do what I'm doing right now,
it's not for everybody.
It's not easy for him. So we gave it a try. unfortunately, it didn't work out in the first run. And I sat on the concept for a number of years. Um, an opportunity came. We did a show that was called Dinner with Destruction, and if you've ever seen Venom, he's a this
Yep.
giant, massive a man, nearly 700-pound man, and almost like a rib to him. We did this show called Dinner with Destruction, where it was almost like a cooking show where they sat at the dinner table and they discussed the events of XCW and what happened. Very similar to the concept of Rundown, and we were also presenting one special match on there that you can't see anywhere else. And
Yep.
um, you know for being a big man, he's super picky, and it became very hard to film that show. And we have guests that were having to come on the show, so we were guaranteed we had three or more people in the studio at a time to shoot this show, and it just became very difficult, very tedious. And then of course COVID happened, and made some things very complicated. So
Sure.
um, when that show kind of came and gone, I'm like, well, what's next? I want to make sure that I have content on the channel as much as possible. So Brendan Stickle was the original co-host alongside Venom on Dinner with Destruction, and Brendan was going through some injuries and stuff, and took some time away from XCW. So it opened up an opportunity for ACT to come on Dinner with Destruction and kind of fill the void that Brendan Stickle left. And through that show, we've seen very rarely does he get tongue tied.
He's a good speaker. He looks like he might have maybe he is from Harvard for all I know, because I tell you what, he speaks well. He's got kind of the right
Yeah,
poise. He's a really good host, I gotta say.
and he does have a background doing some different sporting events and doing commentary for
Yeah, I
sporting
could see
events.
that a little bit. I
Yeah,
could see that he's got that kind of poise, he's got that kind of posture, that speech. I could kind of see that kind of neutral mannerism. I could see that a little bit because again, I do this myself and I have kind of the same background, so I get it.
yeah. So I mean, he was doing that in high school and college. So he spoke well, and I'm like, hey, I have this show that I jump started years back, and unfortunately, it tanked. But I think that you may be a good fit for this. So we filmed a pilot episode, and now we're three full seasons in, and the show just keeps evolving. If you watch the early days of Rundown, you didn't see any of the clips or anything like that. It was just the ACT shooting the breeze, putting over what happened on the show, and then we would present the XCW extra at the end, which was a never before seen match that you couldn't see on our normal programming. So, and it's evolved. Now you see the different video graphics on there that's
Yep.
showing what's coming up on the main card shows. He's recapping the show, and it's showing footage of the guys and
Get the
pieces of
phone
the
call
show.
interview for like maybe 2 or so minutes. You get that one match. Like I said before in the beginning, it reminds me so much of WCW Worldwide. You would come home and you'd watch Worldwide. You'd get a recap of like some of the big things that happened on Nitro. Maybe you'd get an interview, maybe a pre-taped interview, whatever it was. And you get like one match, maybe two matches. And you kind of like that was your show. It was kind of almost like your fast food version of what happened. So that's why I really enjoy the rundown shows. And Alex is definitely a perfect host. And another thing you guys also do is these extra shows. Talk about these extra shows because we get footage. Again, another place where talent get their opportunities to kind of hone their skills and become the future of this wonderful company that you've built called XCW Shelbyville. So talk about the extra shows.
Yeah, so that was just something unique. Obviously we were filming content for the rundown episodes. Um, to have that extra match on the show, to have extra content, and I ended up at one point with so much backlog footage. I'm like, I got to make another platform to get some of these out. When we're doing rundowns only the day after all of our premieres, and it's so it's an every other week thing. We got to get the presentation of these matches out to the fans. Um, so I just took it upon myself. I'm like, hey, what if I just make a compilation of some of these matches that you can't find anywhere else. And of course, it offered the unique opportunity of having guys who are in XCW that maybe can't commit to the schedule anymore. We have kind of a strict schedule with XCW in terms of taping. 2024's season's mapped out completely already.
What very Vince McMahon like? Vince McMahon would have everything, Fletch, that would be mapped out a year ahead. So I kind of like that. I kind of think that it gives structure, it gives order, and it kind of, instead of just doing it on the fly and thinking, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. You're a year ahead. So I kind of think that's why the company and the shows are so smooth. And I think that's why you guys have lasted as long as you have.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of, hey, we're going to have X amount of shows. So say it's, 23 shows for the season. And well in advance, August, September of the year prior that, hey, on this day, this year, I'm gonna have a show that day. And so it also leaves little room. I mean, I know a lot of these workers, whether they're independent, backyard, whatever, have had talent booked on the show, and for one way or another, they no show or they can't make the show. There's a lot less tolerance to that in XCW because our schedules are made up so far in advance that there's not really an excuse to not be there or be able to participate. Everybody fits together like a domino, or like a puzzle, and everybody has a domino effect. If one person doesn't come, you may think it's leaving one guy off the card, but that could result in mass chaos for multiple people in the card.
Sure.
So I mean,
And you run a company that you've planned everything in advance. So
yeah,
obviously, also you've got a roster that is very talented.
yeah,
There's a lot of wrestlers that are working with each other, and they've kind of gotten to know each other. So they're obviously expecting to build something to further enhance themselves, but also the company. So that makes a lot of sense. And coming over to you on screen, I mean, what's going on with you? Because it's been a tough last several weeks on XCW Shelbyville TV. I mean, where do we go with you coming up here? And certainly nothing to lose, and obviously Summer Mania 18.
So one thing that I wanted to do was, and this was something I know that you wanted to talk about, and we can talk more about it later, but I'll kind of lay the foundation here. XCW started with myself, Kurt Acid, and Dylan Bostic, and Kurt Acid unfortunately passed
I'm gonna get to him in a few
last
minutes.
May.
Yep.
And he was such a huge part of my life and of this company. Um, he's truly one of those guys. I don't know how many times I've sat back and watched a documentary about somebody. I'm like, man, like, did they only get the people to come on here and say good things about this guy, or were they really as special as they're being presented? And Kurt Acid was the one guy that passed that there wasn't very few bad things to say about. He
Although
was,
Mr. Law actually had kind of a few sort of things he said when he was on the air with us, but that's here nor
yeah,
there.
but it's almost impossible to really run him down negatively. So to keep his memory alive for all the contributions he's had on my life and on the company, we wanted to present something annually to kind of represent him, and that's where we came up with the Kurt Acid Memorial Battle Royal that we had agreed. And I dedicated most of what I had done the last past year to Kurt Acid. So I didn't think it was fair for me to go into the Battle Royal at Greed and have another notch on my belt as a tribute to him. It was kind of an opportunity to pass that torch on to somebody else that also had some experiences and a past with Kurt Acid. So things didn't go my way, but another positive thing that came out of my relationship with Kurt Acid, when I began my backyard wrestling journey, Kurt Acid brought me into a company called BYWE in 2002. And BYWE was ran by a guy named Justin Parsley. And Justin and I I can't say that we hit it off as buds in those early days. Um, Him and I just had two very different visions of what wrestling should be, and he was obviously a little more disorganized than I am because obviously you've heard me just talk on the show here today about how organized and
You reminds me so much when my dad had a band. He'd always say, "Practice. You better be there 5 minutes early, and if you're not, you're out the door." So I understand that the whole you got to be on time, everything on point.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm organized chaos and Justin was running disorganized chaos, and we just had different visions, and obviously it was a completely different time. Obviously, we were both very immature, and we had both had egos that couldn't fit in the same room, and so we kind of split and went our own way. And I created XCW, and he continued to do what he was doing. Him and I, through the years, have kind of patched things up. I worked with him a little bit in 2006 for BYWE, and I made a few appearances there. And for one reason or another, it was short lived. And by the end of 2006, I was strictly back on XCW TV and not working with Justin. Um, Justin then created a company in 2010 called UIW, which you can check out on our XCW All Access page. Um, and so he was going right up against me and even used my company's name on his show to kind of progress his storylines without my consent. Um, so him and I had it out for years and never really had a relationship, even though we went to high school together and wrestled all those years together. Um, when when Kurt Acid passed, one of the people that I reached out to be a part of that memorial show was Justin. I He had never officially wrestled on an XCW program, but I thought if there was any other time better than others, it would be this, to honor our fallen friend. And Justin, with open arms, came out to the show and wanted to create some small magic alongside Venom, who is actually the real life cousin of Kurt Acid. So Justin came in and worked that storyline from Summer Mania, and that's kind of the that's kind of what lit the
That's
fire.
a real meat and potato storyline. That's some
Yeah,
real depthness to that. I'm really that's why I'm really excited about Summer Mania 18. You go to XCW Shelbyville, and I want to give a plug to actually somebody that's actually came on the show Sunday night, and he's also a champion. Another company that I think is very similar to XCW Shelbyville that is called Dominant Breakout Wrestling. Although I think they've kind of gone into a different kind of path than to the backyard. That is Mr. Chase Wakefield, the Double B, the Bitcoin billionaire, the land of the NFTs. He's from the metaverse. He says big fan of XCW. He is also traveling, and he has basically cut his teeth in the indies and underground, YouTube, backyard, and he's another guy that says big fan of XCW. And hello to the Bitcoin billionaire. Maybe you did kind of say you're looking for talent. There's a show December 9th. So maybe Mr. Wakefield can get in touch with you. And Mr. Wakefield, you can do that at XCW_Shelbyville on Instagram. But you said something and I wanted to go back to it because you have experience as a referee. You've also done some time in the indies. And I was curious for the audience and what those experiences were like and how they've maybe helped you in terms of doing all the great things that you've done and keeping XCW Shelbyville alive and thriving.
So my journey in wrestling, of course, started in backyard wrestling. My uncle actually was a referee and started a local company here in Shelbyville, um, years and years and years ago. And a lot of those guys that were on that roster, um, for that local independent were same guys that were wrestling with my dad in the front yard when I was a kid, and doing bottle rocket wars on the 4th of July, and watching wrestling pay-per-views on the weekends at my house. And so, as a child, I grew up knowing these guys. Um, so even though I was a yard tard, as a lot of them put it, they gave me the opportunity to get in there and really learn my craft and to really be under their learning tree. Um, and I'm forever grateful for that. Although there is some bad blood, and that's a whole nother story there.
Yeah, the last thing I'm trying to do is move away from it because right now I'm in the middle of it now in England. There's a guy that I'm very close friends with that he left a promotion that he was the champion of, and there's another guy in there, and I happen to know all the wrestlers in it. They're running it. So the last thing I want to do is be involved in more bad blood. So I really appreciate the fact you're shying away from that.
Yeah. So, and it's not necessarily bad blood. If I call up any one of those guys, for the most part, they're gonna
Pick up
reach
the
out
phone and
to you, and
talk. Sure.
they're gonna be. I was having some issues with one of our rings a few months back, and yes, I say one of those rings because I own three. I don't know why I do though. Um, but I was having some issues with one of the rings. Called up one of the local promoters here, and I was like, "Hey man, like I could really use your help." And within 30 minutes, he was here. So we have a good relationship. We just have a difference of opinion and
Sure.
presentation of wrestling. Um, but so I got the opportunity with them back in 05, 06. I started training there. Initially started out as a wrestler, but I wanted to fast track myself onto the show. So I began training as a referee. Um, my uncle was also a referee, so it was kind of another way to fast track me onto the show. Um, so I was trained by him, and then also there's this guy that some of you may know. His name is Jason Ayers.
Yes.
He's
Yes,
a
I do.
referee in WWE.
Yes.
He went by Jason Harding here on the
Yes.
locals. And Jason had a huge hand in training me how to be a referee and the do's and the don'ts of the independent circuit. And so I owe a lot of kudos to him. Obviously, we've lost touch. The guys all over the world every single day, and he's reffing and producing for WWE. So I couldn't imagine what his life is
Oh,
like.
I'm sure. I was just listening to an interview. I think maybe it was Bruce Pritchard, and he was talking about like when Vince Russo had left WWE the first time, and then basically when you're in that vacuum, it's like 24. It's literally 24/7. You can't even like go on like a day off. So it's like I'm sure when you have that kind of job at that level with Vince McMahon. I mean, I know you're the Vince McMahon of like let's say amateur pro wrestling, but like Vince McMahon, it's literally he legendarily doesn't sleep. I mean,
Right.
people tell me that I don't sleep, but he legendarily doesn't sleep, period. So I can only imagine at that level, you're in that vacuum and you're going to be sucked into it until you got literally nothing left.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously him and I haven't spoken in years, and he deleted me from his Facebook. So he
Oh,
must
well,
even
then
forgot who I
forget. Well, at
am.
this point, forget him altogether. At that point, he deleted you
No,
on
I mean,
Facebook.
but when you're in a space like that, I mean, you see so many millions of faces.
Sure, sure.
I'm not I'm not offended by the fact that he may not remember me or whatever the situation was. But yeah, I was under his learning tree for a few years before he got the big call up, and um, so I refereed for a lot of the companies, and it did get some travel in. I did a couple shows in Louisville, Muncie, Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana.
And Louisville was OVW for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, and then I've had, of course, a lot of ties with some other companies. Um, you know, kind of knowing people in passing. Al Snow and I have had conversations about Dylan because Dylan was a former OVW television champion, and
And I think Cincinnati was. I think Al Snow is from the Les Thatcher camp. I think, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think it's Les Thatcher was Cincinnati, and that was where John Moxley came in, and he was
Mhm.
like the guy that. It makes sense because Louisville was always an old school territory. Cincinnati, you mentioned you were nearby, was an old school territory, and again, Les Thatcher, his school produced Brian Pillman and John Moxley. So I mean that makes sense from those places. I think Al Snow comes from there as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so and then obviously as an independent referee, I got the opportunity to work with a lot of guys. There's a show that I performed in Columbus, Indiana, and they were bringing in guys left and right, guys like Tank Tolan, who was one half of the Dicks in WWE, and I got to work with the Bashams and Al
Wow.
Snow.
I remember the Bashings very well.
Yeah, Al Snow was in there a couple times. Jillian Hall was in and out of there. We actually,
Jillian Hall, who
we
was the bad
actually,
singer. Yes, I remember
yeah, we
Jillian Hall
actually
very well.
share her legal last name. name is Fletcher, so we actually share a
Wow. Well,
platform.
she got correct. OVW. That was listen. OVW. Listen, all those towns. That was early to mid 2000s. Yeah. OVW was John Cena came out of OVW. Randy Orton, Batista, the Bashams. You had Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas came out of there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jillian Hall. Those were all OVW people. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I got to work with Nick Dinsmore, Eugene.
Eugene. Yep.
So there's a ton of talent that I got to work with as a referee. Um, so I'd done that for about 4 or 5 years. So I don't know. I want to say it was like 2018, something like that, or maybe even before that. I had a spell with Bell's palsy, which
I'm
if
sorry.
people don't know what that is, if you watch
Well,
wrestling,
Jim Ross famously
Jim
had it
Ross.
twice. Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately for Jim Ross, his the drooping on his face never came back. It never healed itself, and so that's why it looks like he's had a stroke and he's had issues. And part
Yep.
of that is it's honestly just it's a damaged nerve in your face that it kind of controls one side of your face. Makes you look like you have paralysis on one side.
Yep.
Luckily, I was young enough that I didn't really have any long-term issues from it. Obviously, my face doesn't droop. I can
Yeah,
smile
you look
on both
fine. I mean,
sides.
fine to me. I mean, you look
Yeah.
good.
Um, from there, I did have to kind of watch the headshots I was taking, how many concussions that I was getting, and stuff like that. So I really had to watch my P's and Q's as an in-ring competitor, and still do to this day. But so I had that bout with Bell's palsy, and that kind of abruptly ended my time working with that company or those companies particularly. I took some time off to try to recoup from all of that. There's some effects from that, making me, it made me super tired, and I didn't always feel up to, being able to get out there and perform the way that I felt like I should have performed. And a lot of guys that took me under their wing took offense to me not participating. So the best thing for me to do at the time was walk away. And then I did come back in 2016 after the closing of XCW, and I was doing some executive producing with some of the backstage interviewers and cutting different vignettes and uh, doing lead commentary for a company called All Star Pro that was also here in Shelbyville that was short lived. So I did some work for them and was executively producing and commentating, and I was having a blast. Unfortunately, I had a falling out with one of the executives of that company, and so that's kind of what's kept me grounded in XCW. Is that I mean, I always made an agreement with those guys that XCW came first. So um, I've definitely made a resume for myself in wrestling, but XCW is my home, and um, I I prefer having a platform that I can give opportunity to guys like Soldier and like
Omen
Aaron
Black.
Blaze
Yep.
and Omen and all these guys, give them the platform to come in and work for me and to get their face and their name out there that people might not see on their product. And I have more satisfaction in what I'm doing in XCW than I ever did on the independents.
And it's funny you said that is because again, I cover a lot of the professional wrestling, right? And I feel more enjoyment speaking to, let's say, backyard, YouTube, underground, amateur pro, as you call XCW now, than I deal with some of these pros guys, because it's like, yeah, it's like they don't really want to do it. The promoter wants them to do it, and the guys can't talk, or they talk, but it's like, this is really to me where it's at. And this is why I'm so excited to be able to talk XCW Shelbyville. They have so many great things, and I'm so excited to be speaking about this company. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. We're hanging out here for about 25 or 30 more minutes here with Fletch himself. What an honor it is here to have the man behind one of the greatest backyard wrestling companies in history, not just in the state of Indiana, but in history. They got two huge shows coming up, Nothing to Lose. It's going to be Thursday evening. And then 2 weeks from now, a little over 2 weeks now, we're going to have Summer Mania 18, the summer party is not starting unless you've seen SummerMania 18. I want to say hello to my guest last night who's celebrating a birthday, the birthday boy, the reigning defending ROEW Backyard Wrestling Champion, the wild card Jason Storm. I know you mentioned you know Mr. Storm very well. He is checking in. I hope you have a good birthday, Mr. Storm. Hope you feel better because he was with us last night and he was a little under the weather. So I hope that the wild card is feeling better and I wish him well and happy birthday to him. And I also wanted to ask you about the XCW Hall of Fame. I find this so fascinating that you have almost kind of like a memorial to honor so many of the talents that you've had in XCW. So talk about what led you to create the XCW Hall of Fame.
Well, I know that it means different things to different people because obviously we're not going to have a big physical building of Hall of Fame that's going to have
Well,
their gear.
WWE doesn't have one either, apparently.
You're right. You're right.
They don't have one.
But you know, like I said, it means different things to different people. To some, it's just like, okay, so I'm part of a Hall of Fame for a backyard company. Who cares? And then there's others that are really honored to have the opportunity to be recognized by their peers because if you look at, you talked about our website. If you go on our website, we have an entire gigantic list of alumni that have come and gone.
XCWWrestling1.com /Shelbyville /Wrestling. So make sure you go to that website.
Yeah, so you go to our official website and it's got an alumni section on there, and you can see how many talent have come in and out of XCW in 20 years. And we're only picking two people a year to be honored, to be noticed by their peers, and we try to, me and the production team, and yes, we have a production team.
Well, Law kind of mentioned that. Mr. Law mentioned on the you guys do have a production team. He actually did, to his credit, mention that.
So myself and the production team, we try everything that we can to bust out video packages that really showcases their time in the company. And I have presenters come up there and give a word about that person and kind of talk about their history. And then I just kind of give them the floor, whether they want to just come up and simply say thank you and for being recognized, or if they want to come up there and share some stories of their time with us. And it's more about that than having the actual title of Hall of Fame. I mean, for them to have the opportunity for them to just come on the show, some of these guys haven't been on the show in decades. And then they have the opportunity to come on the show on the Hall of Fame and they get to kind of tell their story and, give some insight on their time with us. I mean, that's just, it's really cool to be able to bring those guys in and give them their moment to speak. So, and that's what it's all about for me. Being able to get some guys together that may have not seen each other in years and give them a small platform to tell their story and to, reminisce about the old times and really give them that platform. So it's a fun day.
Oh, no question. To go to XC Wrestling. It's xcwrestling1.wixsite.com /Shelbyville, where you can find out so many things: roster, event results, champions, Hall of Fame, Shop Zone. Even we've got a Shop Zone page where you can buy merchandise like what Shelbyville's Mr. Fletch himself has, that explosive championship wrestling shirt. He's got the hat, you got the swag. I mean, listen, their Shop Zone is by far better than WWE's Shop Zone. So you want to make sure you go there. It's, again, xcwrestling1.wixsite.com /Shelbyville. And for the Shop Zone, just add / videos. I promise you, this is going to be a site that you're going to want to remember. And also for all matches related to XCW Shelbyville and content, YouTube, XCW Shelbyville. All you got to do, Instagram, XCW_Shelbyville. Also Facebook, you can go to XCW Shelbyville. They are the longest running backyard wrestling company in the history of Indiana. We're going to keep that going. We're going into season 21 already. We're going to go into 22 next year. We got big shows ahead, and I know we're going to be a part of it here in Sportzwire. We had 2 announcements already today. We had the fact that Hunter Halkin and Brogan O'Shea for the international title TLC match is kicking off SummerMania 18. And then later this year in December, apparently the foundation from IMF, Omen Black and Soldier GP, they are going to be in the house. So to recap again, SummerMania 18, international title kicks things off. It's going to be Hunter Halkin versus Brogan O'Shea, TLC match. And then later in December, we're going to see Omen Black and Soldier GP in the house over at XCW Shelbyville. I want to
top of more. There's going to be more. It's not just them. There's more.
Well, we got a few months. We don't have to tell everybody.
Well, I'm not going to reveal all.
Good, because I want to have the guys on. I want to have the company coming on to Sportswire. So I want to be able to talk to some of the talent if they would be so kind to come on to Sportswire. So between now and December, even now and anytime they want to come on to Sportswire, we love to cover XCW Shelbyville. This is a company that I am definitely, like I said, very proud to endorse. So I would like to not spoil every single thing that we know out there, but there's somebody else I want to bring up here before that we get to some closing thoughts and a few other things I'd like to talk about is Trinity, because she's got this character. One minute we see her doing what I'm doing, then the next minute she morphs into this character, and you saw it firsthand. You have to talk about her because she's another person that has caught my attention.
So Trinity is another one of those people that's super passionate about wrestling, and she doesn't get enough credit for how creative she can be.
She's a bad girl, badass, whatever you want to call her. Another one I would not want anything to do with in the Darkened Alley.
So in our in us working with XAWA starting back in 2018, she was fully affiliated with that brand. And even the real life girlfriend of Blackheart for some of that time. And, she came into XCW and, she had the wrestling background from what she was doing and Wrestling Untamed and XCWA. And so she was looking for an opportunity in XCW, and I was really looking to branch out our announcing team, as I still am. There's some changes coming to that, which I'm not going to reveal.
And I think you have a good announcing team, by the way. I happen to enjoy the commentary on the show.
Yeah. So we're gonna have some switch ups in commentary team coming up. And during that Trinity's time in 2020, she was looking for an opportunity, and the opportunity came up for her to take on some ring announcing. And she did a short stint as a manager as well. She was managing Deacon Storm for a short time and even got herself an international championship title run out of it, interestingly enough. So she's brought a lot to the table. She's helped backstage with some of the editing. She actually produces her own show. It's called Sometime Later. It's a docuseries that we feature on XC Wrestling One on YouTube. And so she's got her hands on a lot of cookie jars, and she was a character named Mint Dragon on XAWA, and she was looking to kind of wrap up her wrestling career. She wanted to do a little bit, and so I kind of offered her the opportunity this year to bring that out. But to the XAW audience, she's known as Trinity Parker, and I didn't want to just bring out Mint Dragon and people would be like, well, what the hell is this? So I was like, what if you do almost like a power up, like you come out as Trinity.
It reminds me, I said it to you off there. It reminds me of Abyss almost. She comes out, and it's all of a sudden, it's like the power just leashes in her, and she's a totally different person. And the other thing I mentioned was there's a wrestler in the UK that almost does the same thing with his mask. His name is Rarebit. And Rarebit in GT Ministries, he was kind of like this guy. He was kind of like mild-mannered in a sense, but then all of a sudden he puts the mask on, and it's like, just stay back from him. Just stay back.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And so she wanted this one last little run, and I just thought that it was kind of a nice little thing to do, on her way out. She's going to continue to ring announce for us. She's still going to be fully.
Does a very good job with that, by the way. I want to say does a great job with that.
So she's not going anywhere, but she was looking to wind down, doing some in-ring work, and I just thought that this was a fun little stint. That's Trinity Parker is scheduled to go against one of her former rivals from XAWA, El Loco Rojo, on the Summer Mania pre-show. So
I'm looking forward to this. You got my attention. I am fired up for Summer Mania 18. There's a lot of shows that I watch. A lot of wrestling I watch. I mean, you have the opposite problem than I have. So I love watching wrestling, and especially from XCW Shelbyville. And of course, we have a show that's going on here right now. We're on YouTube over at Dominant Breakout Wrestling, at Dominating Breakout Wrestling. We have their champion, Mr. Judgment, on Thursday night. So I'm sure he'll be in the same chair and saying the same things you are. But I wanted to ask you this question. And you've done a lot in your career, and undoubtedly, I'm sure you've got like a show worth of things. But I always ask this question: is there one or two moments that have stood out in your career most so far in XCW Shelbyville?
I'll be honest, there's a lot.
I figured
There's
that 20 years, right? I mean,
there's probably more things that I've forgotten about than people have done things. Um, so I can't really pinpoint any certain things. I can tell you, you know, what gives me, kind of the best sense of accomplishments. Um, doing that Kurt Aston Memorial show last year was so gratifying to me. I thought it was such a good way to honor such an awesome guy. And that's something that I really hang my hat on is, to be able to present that kind of show, having a more relaxed type show, but still being able to put on what we put on, and myself and Chris Jones main eventing that show. And Chris has been retired for a few years, and for him and I to go out there and do that match for him was special. So that was one of those really you know tug on the heartstring kind of moments for me, where he just abruptly passed. I mean, he was in a show with us in March, and April passed, and here we are in May or June, and we're doing a memorial for him, and it all happened so fast. And for us to be able to pull together and bring out that kind of show that fast was super special. So that's one thing. And then, um, you know, honestly, I have gratification. I have a sense of happiness every single time that we hit that button on the camera at the end of every show, because
That's the best answer that you could have gave, in the fact that, listen, you guys are here, right? 20 years and still going. Again, a lot of companies come on, they got 2-3 years, and God bless, anybody can go out there. But the fact that we're 20 years going strong, almost 500,000 views on YouTube. We've got stuff after stuff worth of shows. We've got more content these days than what WWE puts out. So the fact that you guys are still going, I am so excited about the future here of what XCW Shelbyville has to offer. And I want to say hello to somebody else real quick. Speaking of places not too far from you, also from Wisconsin, he is the RCW World Underground Champion. He's going to be wrestling in the IMF this week. So I'm sure you're going to be hearing things about this. That is Nicholas Crenson, the new Messiah. Nicholas Crenson, of course, another veteran, another one of my favorites on Sportswire. He can certainly talk. He can back it up in the ring. We're going to see him later this weekend over in IMF, and IMF is also coming to Wrestling Championship Entertainment. So very, very excited about all of that here. So looking forward to that. And I did want to ask you then, is there any goals that you have coming up for the rest of the year for XCW Shelbyville?
Well, of course, the main goal is to continue to grow our product, and I know that in what you're telling me, especially, we've we have so much to offer already, and
Absolutely.
finding a way to progress and to grow, it gets harder. The higher that you go up, the more things that you accomplish. Um, One thing that I've noticed, like, I'm just totally blown away at the response of everyone from the show and how supportive they are. Chase Wakefield earlier made a comment about being a big fan. Home in Black. Him and I have had a couple of conversations here in the past few weeks, and he's a big fan, and a lot of those guys that are in Iowa are big XCW fans. And
Yes,
you
you
know,
guys have come up a lot. I can tell you that even on the air on Sportswire, the name's been thrown out even before in the last month. I mean, obviously, Mr. Law, and your company's name definitely carries something. It's almost kind of like, how can I put it, like the Midas touch, the old commercials, the Midas touch. You guys have that Midas touch that people know. It's like they can trust you guys. They believe in you guys, and they have comfort. And when they say your name, XCW Shelbyville, maybe unlike some other companies out there with three initials, when they hear XCW Shelbyville, it's almost like people smile. It's like have a Coke and smile. That's kind of like I think what you guys are.
Yeah, and like even we've had opportunities for like this year we had Aaron Blaze be able to compete on our show for the very first time, and a guy like Jack Delta who is a
Yes,
really
Mr.
well
Delta.
traveled.
Yes, he was on Extra, the last Extra show. Beat
Mhm.
I think Alex Cardona, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes, and there's more
in the
content to
main
come.
event.
I know that he's hung up the boots or whatever in the hell he's got going
Yeah,
on, but
I know
we have
it's a
we have
topic.
some content coming out with Jack Delta still to present to the XW fans.
Okay, we'll
So
appreciate that.
but you know it's crazy when I hear the praise and everybody who has been super supportive of our brand. You know, I have a hard time grasping that sometimes. Um, but like any other promoter or any other person, I'm probably the hardest on myself more than anyone. Um, there are times where I sit down and I look at some of the viewing numbers that we're getting on YouTube, and I don't know if it's the algorithm or if it's something that we're doing or not doing. But some of those numbers are pretty low. Um, Not really getting the views that I'm striving for, and of course that's one of my biggest goals is to get more eyes on the product. And no offense to TVW. Okay, I
Oh,
threw that name
I
out
feel like now we're going WWF, WCW. Go ahead, go ahead.
but and I'm not saying that they don't put out good content.
No, but
There's
there's
been
one guy that's doing his imitation of the current champion, another guy that's doing an imitation of a guy that was a legend. And I'm going to hold that thought here because speaking of getting you more views, I'm actually going to help you get more views right now because Omen Black's got like 60 seconds and he wants to say something. So it's your show, Omen. I know you got like 60 seconds. Floor is yours.
Fletch, it's awesome to meet you. Um, you kind of already spoiled the foundation and IMF coming to XCW, but
I'm trying to get views. I'm trying to get numbers. All right.
hey, you're getting us numbers too, so it's a give and take. All you gotta say is IMF looks forward to working with XCW, building a strong business relationship, and we thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
for all the tag teams out there that want to take on the foundation, all I gotta say is you could try, and good luck. Now, Fletch, have a good night. Tom, it's always a pleasure.
On your
And
show,
Fletch,
it's your show, Omen. It's your show.
about to say,
So
Fletch, have fun on my show. I'll see you sometime.
fair enough. Okay, there you go. So hopefully that helps you get some views. I mean, obviously, IMF are on YouTube and they got almost 1,500 subscribers and they get views. But listen, I just want to say this, and I know Nicholas Crenson has a comment. Views are one thing, but I do believe in the fact that you have a product that I believe in, and I believe you coming to Sportswire is going to help views. I don't know how many views it's going to get, but I do believe that views are only one algorithm, and I think certainly, listen, anybody can get views doing a Kiss tribute concert. Anybody can do views doing a cosplay impression. But at the end of the day, you've been here. And people will certainly, maybe they go through trends, maybe they go through fads, but just like in music, at the end of the day, people that have been established and have been tried and true acts who have the staying power and the stability, people will always come back to that. So at the end of the day, let your heart not be troubled. You've been here and you're going to continue to be here. For certain companies that might get views for doing a spot or maybe doing, again, like I said, the cosplay imitations or the tributes out there, I wouldn't even pay attention to it because at the end of the day, and I know this myself, I've been doing this for 5 years, right? So 5 years in podcasting is kind of like 20 years in backyard wrestling because when I started doing this, it was on Skype calls. So I can tell you that don't pay attention to the views because the views are only one measurement of success. And at the end of the day, trends come and go, but you're here to stay.
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't gonna put them down necessarily. I have my opinions, and you've kind of talked about some of those opinions. Um, and I've reached out to some of those guys and talked to them. And I've also, I don't know if you've seen, I posted on Facebook a few weeks ago, hey, what about a Forbidden Door and the possibility of us working
What?
together? And
Well, well,
obviously,
well. Omen and Soldier and Nicholas Crenson with WCE and DKW, they've been to me, and again, my show, well, it's Omen's show, right? But, Sportswire, we've been kind of at the forefront of the Forbidden Door because I do agree with you. And I saw your post, by the way. I did see it because I follow everything you do. You know that. We speak all the time. I do think that in backyard wrestling, we should be working together.
yeah,
We should be promoting each other. It should be all about the exchange of ideas. I don't know how you want to do it. I don't know if it's a title, whatever it might be, because to me, a title is just a prop anyway. I think, why not see the best talent? Why not see Jason Storm? Why not see Chase Wakefield? Why not see Corey Lee, Jay Ellis? Why not see Jackson Law? Why not see Nicholas Crenson? And why not see anybody you want to throw out there? Soldier, Omen Black. Why not Mr. Judgment? Why not listen? Anybody you throw a name out there, James Taylor. Just throw him out there and let's see him in a ring and let's see who's the best person.
yeah, and I wasn't necessarily saying that to knock him, and I know that there was guys that came on there and commented from their brand and was
Yep.
kind of like, and they had this perception of like I said something or did something negatively towards them, and that's not the case at all. I was not looking for that opportunity to necessarily steal their viewers away. Of course, I want
Right.
to grow mine, and they have a cult following, and would I like a piece of that? Who in the hell wouldn't? Well, I mean,
Yes, but remember though, they're following what they've done is they only work with themselves, and
exactly,
so
and that's the
it.
problem.
Right. So
You've seen me, you've seen XCW go out and work with. We worked with Aaron Blaze, who's obviously not on our roster.
well, you
We
had
worked
Jack
with,
Delta. Jack Delta is the I've been everywhere man, right? You have
yeah,
obviously Jackson Law. Jackson Law is kind of the next guy. I mean, you've had other guys that I don't want to name that have been on Sportswire that have certainly interesting histories. They've been in your company. I mean, so you guys have done that. You guys have gone out there, like again, Omen and Soldier. They're doing the same thing. Nicholas Crenson and WC is doing that. DKW is doing that. RWA up in my neck of the woods in Rochester is doing that. VTW, DBW. Well, DBW is kind of now gone into almost kind of the pro wrestling door. But the fact is that you guys have never shied away with that. They have been good at kind of monopolizing their one thing. I'm not trying to knock them because they come on here. They like our content too. But, when you only work with yourself, that's what you're going to get.
right. And I feel like, especially a lot of credit has to go to Law and helping us kind of branch out and having more people in the backyard community kind of come together and work with us. Big kudos to him as a traveling guy, being a part of our roster permanently. Getting the name out there and having more eyeballs and being able to work with guys like Omen and Aaron Blaze and the forbidden name Anthony Steele. A lot of these guys,
I have him on Sunday, so I was trying to be. This one I was actually trying to tippy toe around because,
I know that he's got a certain reputation and
yes,
things with him and XCW didn't
sure.
end
I
as
understand.
well
I
as it
like
should
I
have.
do like Anthony Steele,
I
but
don't have an issue with Anthony.
yeah.
Anthony even I'll even say even kind of did me wrong, and it was just one of those things where he apologized. We had talked about it. Nothing's ever matched up
Yeah,
for us to
I
work
think
together
he
again, but that
tries.
doesn't
I
mean that it
really
has
do
to be.
like Anthony Steele. I mean, I know the guy. I speak with him off the air, and I do think that he really loves wrestling. He has a mind. Everybody has different opinions of different people. And that's like, listen, Baskin Robbins is 31 flavors. There's 31 flavors in the wrestling business. That's all.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't have an issue working with them. Of course, I got to put XCW first, and I don't mean that in terms of booking. So, like, if you go back and watch the stuff that we did with other promotions, 9 times out of 10, honestly, I probably put their companies over more than my own, and I probably shouldn't have. But I'm very giving and booking, and a lot of our guys are not shook by guys coming in and working with us and then putting them over. Some have egos and some don't want to put people over, and then there are some that are just happy to have the opportunity to work outside of their comfort zone. So um, we've we've always worked with other companies, and you know in some regards, and I don't want to make this a knock on IMF or on ESW or whoever else is out there in
Right.
wrestling land. But I feel like in some capacity, the XCW and TBW are kind of the top tier guys in terms of YouTube backyard companies.
Well, I would throw personally a company called VTW in the ring, and I think that Jack Delta mentioned them. I've watched some of their content. The people that they have in there, I know they don't have maybe the name as long as TBW, but I would certainly, and I said this last night, and I said this the night before, I would definitely put VTW, at least from a production standpoint, with you guys. I mean, I definitely think that you guys are right up there. I mean, TBW, if I don't even know how I want to answer TBW right now, because I actually do watch the content. I have to try to be as down the middle as I can. I'm really trying to do that, but I would definitely, I'm going to leave them aside, but I definitely want to put VTW with you guys versus the World Wrestling. They've got a lot of talent, that pros, a lot of indie guys. So I think that would be a company that, again, I would put out there. But you guys, what you guys have done in terms of the production, the
Right.
editing, the
Well,
overall-
I wasn't trying to knock anybody. I'm just saying in terms of like I've said a couple times
Yeah.
already on the show that there's times I don't even get to watch my own product. So I
sure.
definitely don't get the opportunity to see a lot of the product that's out there. Like I wish that I could, but with the shoot job and as much as I do for
I understand. Listen, I cover you guys, so I'm covering all these companies, and on top of that, I have to work over and I have to try to get sleep. I have a background in politics, and I'm trying as hard as I can to juggle that. I'm doing a news radio show at a radio station Wednesday night, so I can sympathize with you. I see your Facebook post, and I don't say it to that level because it's not who I am, and I thankfully, financially, I'm very comfortable. You probably saw some of my promos, but in terms of the timing, like I totally understand what you go through. That from just juggling a life, I totally get it. So I understand. Like it's hard. It's hard out there. I get it.
So I mean, yeah, but and when they think that I'm just coming after them because they have numbers or because they have a ring or I've had numbers and a ring for a decade now. It's not about that. It's about they have a cult following and I feel like so does XCW to a certain degree. And if we can make magic together and build that, I don't know how many guys like Atomic Titan or Max Chaos or guys that have come in and talked to over the past couple of years, and they're like,
Yeah, some of these other companies like Jason Stone has been mentioned with him. Obviously Omen and Soul, like Atomic Titan's a name that gets out there, but there's depending on who you say, they say, well, they're exclusive to TBW and they run a promotion that's to what they want, and then you do different things, and if but
yeah, and I mean, but like I've always you can ask Atomic Titan. I'm sure if he's honest with you, he'll tell you, him and I worked together a little bit in UWA. We didn't work against each other. I mean, we just worked on the same card.
right.
We'd had conversations and we've talked about him coming in and working and, maybe me coming and working the PWF when it was kind of its own entity before he went back to TBW and all that stuff. And, we had conversations and we were friendly and we've had some nice conversations. It's nothing negative.
Yeah,
And that's,
I can tell you, yeah, very, very nice. He's a very nice guy, I can tell you.
but it's to me, it's not about, what can they do for me? It's about what I can do for the community. And like I said, I proved that working with other companies in the past years, and it's the same working with Soldier and Omen and all these guys and Jackson Law and working with CBW. Like I do have a little bit of range. It's a short leash because of how many hands I have.
I don't even know how you manage because you're working, you got the kids, you got the house, you got the companies. I mean, I do not know how you do it. And Nicholas Crenson would like to say, backyard wrestling is for me one of the best forms of wrestling when presented correctly. He said backyard wrestling always struggles on YouTube for views. He also would like to say, I've definitely been following XCW for a while here. I think I might have even reached out in the past. So Nicholas Crenson, I'm sure is a name you've heard on Sportswire, and you'll probably hear a lot more about him when he attends the IMF's next show because WC and IMF are locked in a war. They had their own breaking news announcement with Omen and Soldier. They're going to be in a tag team match. Anything goes with them. So we'll see what's left of both camps. But I wanted to ask you this question, as I always ask before I get to closing thoughts. And I'm so appreciative of your time because I realize you have a family, and everything else going on. You've got probably XCW TV to get on. You're kind of like Vince McMahon. You literally probably don't sleep altogether. Very similar to me.
Lots of editing tonight too.
I figured that. So I don't want to keep you much longer. But what would you want to say to anybody that has supported XCW Shelbyville over the years, and to anybody tonight that is getting a chance to hear you guys for the first time on Sportswire Radio?
Well, I mean, part of me is kind of humbled to know that there are so many people out there that are supportive and that are following our product and think so highly of it. And you know, when I do get in my head about the views and the numbers that I see coming out of the analytics, to hear some of my peers come on here and say nice things and um because I'll be honest, a lot of times when I watch this show, I see a lot of guys that are on here that are just here to put themselves over. And if I'm familiar with the performer or the product, I have no problem putting other people over as well. Unfortunately for me and how busy my schedule is, as we talked about, I don't know much beyond my product, and some of that's my own fault, and some of that is just kind of how my life goes. Um, and like, but to hear some of the people on here say such nice things about the work and dedication that we put into our product, and you know, my wife is barely had a relationship with me in the
Your
last
wife
year.
got to win, like, I guess, the Nobel Peace Prize or a Mother Teresa Award because of the time you put into this. I mean, God bless your wife is all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I mean, she's had to put up with a lot of crap. She's been with me since 2005, and that was only the third year of XCW at that point. Well, second year and then third season. So you put that in perspective. She has seen, heard, and dealt with it all. There's times where she's just absolutely fed up, and then there's times where she's fully into the mix. And as you know, she's the owner operator on the show
Yep.
as a character. So and she's been in and out of the company, featured on camera since 2011, and or actually 2009 rather. She did a short storyline in '09. So having that support, and then having the spinoff of JWF, which is ultimately the future. It's just crazy to when you put it all into perspective, and how much sacrifice that I've made, and how much of my life I've lost.
I can imagine. I mean, I can only,
And
imagine.
then to hear, and then to hear some of the guys come on here and talk about how they follow the product and how they enjoy it. It's so humbling and gratifying to me that it's not everything that I'm doing is not completely unnoticed, because there are times when I'm sitting there looking at the analytics going, what am I doing with my life? So it's great to hear that people think so highly of us.
Well, I definitely think very highly of you. I definitely think very highly of XCW Shelbyville. I definitely would highly like to continue to talk about this company throughout the coming months, weeks, and years, because I think that people are starting to follow Sportswire Radio on YouTube, and I think that there's a lot of peers of yours that want to hear more XCW talent come on here, along with yourself, whenever that time might be. So,
Yeah, with 20 years, it's endless. I could talk on here for days. And
I understand that, but you just mentioned you've got a wife, you've got a show, you've got editing. I mean, I definitely want you back.
Hey, they let me carve out as much time as I wanted tonight, so kudos to them.
I appreciate that very much. And I feel like I could ask you more questions, but what I want to do, though, is give you closing thoughts, most importantly, to plug anything that you'd like, anything you want to say on your mind, whether it's about Nothing to Lose, Summer Man 18, anything else. You are the boss. You are the man. You are truly, I think, one of the goats of backyard wrestling. I think certainly you have shown every reason as to why XCW Shelbyville is going to be a rising tide that lifts all boats. I am very honored to have you. I want to give you the floor now, some closing thoughts. Like I said, anything else you want to plug, share, or say, the floor is most certainly yours, and fire away, my friend.
Well, I guess I'll try to get as much of my content out there as I can. So obviously we have the XCW All Access channel, which is kind of our secondary channel that a lot of eyeballs don't get on. We have JWF, Jacoby Wrestling Federation, on there, which has kind of a cult following, and I hope that that's not just creeps that want to watch little kids. I hope that there's people who genuinely want to see that genuinely want to see what happens next with these kids. And we have a couple of really cool kids that are a part of JWF, and we're going to continue to tell that story and have fun with that secondary thing. We also have other shows on there, UIW, which was formerly owned by Justin Parsley. We have that
You were doing
presentation.
interviews on there as well for a while on the All
Yes.
Access page.
Yeah, we have free time interviews from the past Men of Honors. We've got game shows that we've contested over the years that are on there. Some of the Tron videos, our entrance videos that are on there. We have a company that I acquired a few years ago, IBW, Indiana Backyard Wrestling, or Indiana Brutal Wrestling, I believe it's called, a company here in Indiana, way down south near Kentucky. I bought a ring from them, and I was like, hey, what are you guys doing with the video library? And so I acquired the video library, and I also present that on the All Access channel, as well as ROP, which is a trampoline fed that DJ Wolbert had years ago when he was just a little tyke. And so I may have some XAWA content going up there at some point. Critical Backyard Wrestling. Obviously, I'm working closely with Jackson.
From CBW, Jacob Collins, absolutely, know very well.
So I'm sure that there's going to be some CBW content on there at some point as well. I mean, they're running wild on their own channel, but definitely with the intertwining of the talent and stuff, I'm sure that I'm going to be able to present them in their own light. Of course, FWL, Future Wrestling Legends, also on our XW All Access channel. So it's endless of the amount of things that you can see over on that channel. And of course, on our main channel, XC Wrestling 1, we have Nothing to Lose coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern this Thursday night. We also have Rundown the next day, Friday at 4 p.m., which is going to recap all the events of Nothing to Lose and also kind of build up the card for what you're going to expect at our biggest event, SummerMania 18, here in 2 weeks. We also have episodes of Showtime, which is a docuseries. Sometime later, another docuseries. We still have XW Recall right now. We're in the middle of the season that is dedicated to Kurt Acid. We also have, like I said, Rundown, and then of course we have our backlogs of XCW5, which I have a new season getting ready to come out. No False Finish.
6 seasons, 65 episodes worth.
Yeah. There the amount of content is on there. It's endless. I believe there's nearly 600 videos on our main.
I was going to say, I think there's over 500 already. It's really, the catalog is just phenomenal.
Yeah. We've talked about possibly opening some kind of premium app or a Roku channel or something, because we have so much footage, whether it's our own XW footage or footage from other companies. I just recently acquired all that footage of BYWE from my early days of wrestling and stuff too. So
that's funny you said that, because one of the things 2 years ago, I wanted to purchase a video library in England. There was a guy that was running a site. He was posting content from like these different independent companies, and I had obviously the means to do it, but the guy, for whatever reason, didn't want to sell me the content. He's like, well, it's not going to get any views. But I'm like, well, I'm just starting out my YouTube page, which I really only promoted since I got banned on Facebook for whatever reason. But I had thought at that time, well, if I could acquire this content, if I have my YouTube page to build it up, I would have got views. So I could understand from a business standpoint purchasing the video content, because that was me 2 years ago. It just didn't work out for whatever reason.
Right. So I mean, we have the backlog footage from other federations on the All Access channel, and then of course we have our biweekly presentation of XCW on our main channel. We have a Twitter, XCW_Shelbyville. We have an Instagram, XCW_Shelbyville as well. XC Wrestling 1 on YouTube, XCW All Access. We have XCW shopzone.threadless.com. We're all over the place. So, we want more eyeballs. We want people to see the product, and we're proud of the product, and we just hope that it reaches everyone and everyone enjoys what we're putting out.
I definitely enjoy the product. I'm definitely looking forward to watching Nothing to Lose. I'm definitely looking forward to watching Summer Mania 18, and you can count on my support, my endorsement. I'm really excited to have you onto the fold here on Sportswire Radio. I know you called me out a couple of times, like, when am I coming on? And I'm like, no, I really am going to bring you on. I got so overloaded, but I'm glad it worked out now because I got to know about the content. I had Law coming on, and I kind of now I'm like really comfortable, and I know what the product has, and I always like to do something when I know something. But I'm not one of these guys, a lot of podcasts. I know you've done a podcast on wrestling and other things. Other podcasters will just bring somebody on, and they won't know anything about them. I like to come on. I like to make sure it's it's a flowing conversation. We know what we're talking about. We're here to promote you because I believe in promotion. I believe in doing it the right way. And like I said, a lot of my contemporaries, my peers that have done this, at least in England, they would do these shows and they would have people on, and they didn't know who the wrestlers were. So I want to make sure that I know XCW Shelbyville, which I definitely do now know it. You can find them at XCW_Shelbyville on Instagram. You can also find them on YouTube, XCW Shelbyville. Most importantly, xcwrestling1.wixsite.com/Shelbyville. You are going to find out all the content you need. Buy a shirt, support this company. My friend, beautiful looking shirt, beautiful looking hat. A rising tide always lifts all boats. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. This start, I think, of a very fruitful relationship to come between your company and Sportswire Radio. Keep up the great work. Thank you for all that you've done for wrestling, not just backyard wrestling, YouTube, amateur pro, whatever you want to call it. Thank you for putting your heart and soul out there, because it's not easy to have done what you've done, to sacrifice more than half your life. It doesn't go unnoticed. It's not going to be in vain. And I promise you, you got my support, and that definitely is going to mean something. I promise you that. So thank you for all you do. I'm looking forward to these next shows, and definitely looking forward to more XCW Shelbyville coverage here on Sportswire Radio very soon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the man behind XCW Shelbyville, 9-time champion of the world, Hall of Famer, owner. He has done it all, and we were honored to have him tonight here. That was Mr. Fletch himself. You can find him again, YouTube, XCW Shelbyville, XCW_Shelbyville on Instagram, xcwrestling1.wixsite.com/Shelbyville. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, and please go out and support them. Nothing to Lose is this Thursday evening. 2 weeks from now, a little over 2 weeks from now, will be Summer Mania 18. If you're on sportnarium.com/play, you're going to go back to your regularly scheduled programming. I'll be back here at midnight tomorrow with Vito Fratelli, the belt collector, and then the next day, I'll be with the DBW champion of the world, Mr. Judgment himself. He's going to talk all things related to the fall of Double Cross Plus, much, much more. So thank everybody for tuning in on Sportswire Radio. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. I am your voice of wrestling, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Thank you once again.